There's many things that I read in here that were false. Like you saying that I wore 6-inch Louboutin heels to court.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
It's amazing. It's amazing, the outpouring of love and support. It took something like a hurricane to make us have a happy ending.
Dee Dee was happy enough just having medical care for Gypsy. She says she never expected this.
People lie. Some do it for money, some for attention, and others truly believe the stories they're telling. But what happens when these lies get so big that they make international headlines? In this video, we're diving into the bizarre world where fake memories are sold as truth, and the line between fact and fiction get dangerously blurry. From heartfelt confessions to mind-boggling claims, we'll uncover how the most unbelievable stories can sometimes fool us all. And the most twisted part, some of these stories were believed for years without anyone questioning them. In 1997, Misha, a memoir of the Holocaust years, dropped, and it had people. The story of a young Jewish girl whose parents were taken by the Nazis and who ended up wandering across Nazi-occupied Europe, surviving by hiding in forests, scavenging for food, and somehow being protected by a pack of wolves. Yeah, people ate that up. It sounded like something out of a movie, and eventually it was. A decade later, the story was adapted into a French film called Surviving with Wolves. But here's the twist. In 2008, everything unraveled. Investigations showed that knew her was actually Monique de Wael, a Belgian Catholic, not a Jewish girl lost in Europe, and definitely not hanging out with wolves. She had been in school in Brussels during the war. Her parents? Members of the Belgian resistance. They were arrested and killed by the Nazis, yes, but that's where the real story ends. When the truth came out, Stefanesca didn't deny the lie. Instead, she said, "It's not the true reality, but it was my reality." In other words, the whole thing was a way for her to process her trauma, even if that meant completely inventing a past. The damage was done though. Stefanesca had already won a $22.5 million judgment against her publisher. That money? She was ordered to pay it all back. On top of that, her hoax ended up fueling Holocaust deniers and casting doubt on the legitimacy of actual survivor testimonies. In 2021, a documentary called Misha and the Wolves came out, and it went deep into the story, showing how the lie grew and what it all means for how we remember the Holocaust. The Joyce McKinney case is one of those wild stories that you just can't make up. It's a mix of obsession, delusion, and media chaos, and it all started with Joyce's belief that she was rescuing her true love, Kirk Anderson, from the Mormon Church. According to Joyce, she and Kirk had this intense romantic relationship, and she was convinced he'd been brainwashed. She wasn't committing a crime in her eyes. She was on a mission to save him. But, of course, there was a huge problem. Kirk didn't remember any of this. For him, their relationship was nothing but a fantasy, something Joyce had built up in her head. Her defense wasn't based on facts, but on her emotional attachment to the idea that they were soulmates. And that's the tricky thing about memory. When we get emotionally attached to a version of events, we can end up shaping our recollection to fit our needs. The trial became a battle between what Joyce believed happened and what was actually true. She had convinced herself that she was the hero in the story, even though Kirk was adamant that he didn't share the same feelings. And the more the case played out, the more it became clear how easy it is to distort memories when emotions are involved. Joyce's version of events was so powerful to her that it created an entirely different reality. One that didn't match the facts, but was still believed by her. In the end, Joyce was never convicted, but her case highlights just how much emotion can influence our memory, and how the media can distort the truth when it gets caught up in sensationalism. It's a story of how easily a personal belief can spiral into a whole new version of reality, even when the facts don't add up. Joyce McKinney's story might not have been the romance the tabloids painted, but it's definitely one for the books. The repressed memory movement, which gained momentum in the 80s and 90s, revolved around the idea that certain traumatic experiences could be buried so deep in the mind that people wouldn't consciously remember them. The theory was that with the right kind of therapy, these hidden memories could be brought to light. The issue: not all of these recovered memories were real. The movement took off as therapists encouraged patients to uncover long-forgotten events, often using techniques like hypnosis or guided suggestions. Books, talk shows, and experts started pushing the narrative that these repressed memories were key to understanding mental health struggles like anxiety, depression, or relational issues. But as the practice spread, it led to an increase in people recalling troubling experiences from their past, many of which involved their families. Things took a darker turn when individuals began accusing family members, like parents, of things they couldn't remember. Some even went to court, with accusations that caused serious personal and legal consequences. The problem? There was no concrete evidence to back up these claims, and many of those who made the accusations later admitted that their memories were false, often the result of suggestion from therapists or the process of trying to make sense of difficult feelings. In the end, the repressed memory movement caused a lot of harm. Families were torn apart, legal battles ensued, and many people came to realize that their recovered memories were not based on real events. The McMartin preschool trial, which kicked off in the early 1980s, is still one of the wildest cases in American legal history. It all started when a young child accused a teacher at McMartin Preschool in California of inappropriate behavior. That alone would have been a serious case, but what came next? Well, let's just say it spiraled fast. More kids came forward, each one saying they were involved in even more serious and disturbing situations, implicating almost everyone who worked there. At first, authorities were thinking they were uncovering a massive network of wrongdoing, something that could shake up the entire preschool system. And of course, once the media got hold of the story, it was everywhere. The whole thing turned into a media circus. The problem? There was practically no solid evidence to back up any of the accusations. And it didn't help that many of the kids' statements seemed to be heavily influenced by the way the investigators questioned them. Some of the children even admitted later that their memories had been shaped by the way the questions were framed. The trial was a mess. It dragged on for a mind-numbing 7 years, burning through millions of dollars in the process. But in the end, guess what? No one was convicted. The charges were either dropped or dismissed. The whole thing came crashing down on itself, leaving only confusion, destruction, and a trail of ruined reputations. McMartin was a case where panic and media frenzy fueled a story that no one could get out of. And when the dust settled, no one had anything to show for it, except for a lot of wrecked lives. Anna Anderson was the original "I'm not who I say I am, but I really wish I was." For decades, Anna managed to convince people that she was Anastasia Romanov, the youngest daughter of Tsar Nikolai of Russia, who's believed to have been murdered along with her family in 1918. Now, here's the thing. She wasn't even remotely connected. Anna showed up in Germany in the 1920s and immediately started insisting that she was Anastasia. She said that she survived the brutal execution of her family, but of course she lost her memory in the process. She described being attacked, shot at, and then nursed back to health by a mysterious Russian doctor. And of course no one ever found this doctor, but who's checking details when you've got an impossible story? She had people eating out of her hand. She had the look, the accent, the story, and a whole bunch of people believed her. We're talking about Romanov family members, royalty fans, the media, you name it. The press ate this up. This was the 1920s version of a royal true crime mystery. Her story had inconsistencies, sure. But the more she stuck to her version, the more convincing she became. She didn't have amnesia, she just had a really good imagination. This became a global headline, and people just wanted to believe in a long-lost princess. The mystery of the missing Romanovs was huge. The media loved it, people adored her, and Anna basically became a celebrity. But, plot twist. DNA testing in 1991 proved that she wasn't Anastasia. Shocker, right? Turns out, Anna was actually Franziska Czanskowska, a Polish factory worker with a pretty wild imagination. Yeah, that's the story. And what's really strange? Even when the truth came out, people still didn't want to let go of the fairy tale. It's like, once you get caught up in the drama, it's hard to admit that it was never real to begin with. Anna Anderson wasn't a Romanov, but she managed to live her whole life as a pseudo-princess, playing the role of a missing royal, no matter how much evidence stacked up against her. Because sometimes, if a lie is wrapped in just enough mystery, the truth will start to sound, well, boring.